Lana, Ivina, StarkWare, Noam, Cohen, Binary Builders and Interchain Foundation, Raza, Zaidi, Scroll, Emil, Wagner, ICP, Hub, Germany, and last but not least, Fernando, Martinho, Relayz. Welcome them with applause, please. We're almost all set. We heard in the kids' education presentation that women are generally wiser about finance, haven't we? So I'm glad to point out we finally have a woman on this stage. Enjoy.
Hello. Very happy to be here. Good day to everyone. Thank you guys for being here. So we have a very interesting topic here, which is adoption, which is something that, we have very strong technical people. We solve very complicated problems such as decentralization, trustlessness. We solve very complex cryptographic proofs, snarks, starks, and whatnot, But sometimes we forget about the, how do we actually enter the real world and how do we make it accessible to people and how do we onboard people? So my first question will be about what tools are there? So blockchain technology exposes like an unusual amount of things that people need to know. When I use Duolingo, Spotify, or something like that, I don't know if they're using, MongoDB or AWS in the background or what. So it exposes, keys. It exposes seed phrases, giving, revoking, some spender approvals and whatnot.
Lana, sorry to interrupt. One minor request. Can you hold the microphone a little closer, please?
Absolutely. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Mempools and, IPFS and, God knows what. The question is, do you think this is hindering adoption? Which I think it does. And, which innovations are abstracting away underlying technology in a secure and a private way, not just, let somebody manage my keys or passwords or whatever.
So I don't have a microphone, but hey, hi everyone. My name is Noam. So I think what's happening right now is that, and this is something I think a lot of people seem to misunderstand. From my personal opinion, like a lot of the DeFi protocols specifically are actually B2B solutions. Yes, there's a lot of like pro users out there that are trying to discover the next lending protocol, doing this and that, and they're comfortable using seed phrases and stuff. But I think we're moving towards a stage where you would probably have some kind of a super app, some kind of wallet that abstracts away the sign-in situation. Basically, you sign in with your email address. There are some clever tricks in terms of like creating backups. This is already happening, of course. And account abstraction is a great sort of like tool to get there. But in my mind, the Uniswaps, the DYDXs, the whatever, all the protocols out there, some of them will be used by pro traders, but I think the average Joe, if you will likely just have an app which have integrated a lot of these DeFi protocols. And I think this is generally the case where I think I see most of most of blockchain right now as a B2B solution. And at some point abstraction will happen. It becomes a little bit more difficult when you have this multi-chain thesis that's happening right now and becoming more popular, where you have interoperability issues. But there again, we see abstraction layers show up. In Cosmos, we have something called the Skip API, which allows it allows you to basically easily transfer tokens to other networks without having to think about it, and we see clients integrate those already. It won't be long, I think, before this will become a lot easier for regular folks.
Yeah, I think there are two parts whenever I think of this like the wider like adoption question. And the fact of the matter is like when you look at crypto native and infrastructure, we're not quite there yet. We want to onboard millions of users. To be quite frank, if 1% of the internet jumps on any blockchain today will break. So I think that the feeling that and the narrative that's a lot spoken about right now when people talk about all the things that we're busy with, whether it's on an Oracle section or a roll-up section, and the language that we use, it's for crypto native people, it's for the people who are busy solving real problems, so we can actually, welcome, let's say, the wider adoption. Then there's the other side of the story, which is more like distribution. And then I agree, Netflix doesn't have on their homepage a cloud native first solution with optimized data streaming, wherever you want. Like, they don't have like a Dockerized, containerized application. And so on the distribution side of things, and I think that in the gaming world, they do a very phenomenal job at it. They're just like focused on, how is the the gaming experience optimal, and we make sure that, you know, for instance, social login, which you mentioned, is a standard that is being used. And to be quite frank, the average Joe cares, you know, we say not your keys, not your coins, but it cares less about that. That's just like a fact of matter. And so for wider adoption, you'll see compromises. So I think that on the one hand, I'm super stoked about everything that's happening in the infrastructure and the scalability and the privacy space. We need to work on a lot of stuff, and we need to continue doing that. And the jargon we use there is very relevant. On the other hand, there's just like another world when you really talk about adoption. You shouldn't even mention account abstraction. It's just like, oh, seamless social login, seamless recovery, seamless interaction, and don't even mention gas fees, none of that. And I think that those are two different worlds when it comes to like adoption.
Fantastic. Yes, please.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would think we have to mention account abstraction as part of this discussion, because a lot of people are still continuing to doing the same mistakes, yeah. And we have to understand, when it comes to DeFi, you're going to have the more advanced users that are going to be there, yeah, for sure, yeah. But when we look, and you know, in the last NBX in Warsaw, I actually talk about these, you know, about massive adoption. You know, you guys are all here, probably doing the same things over and over again. It's another game, it's another NFT, it's another marketplace, it's just another DeFi protocol, just with a bit more improved, another L1 and another L2, you know, ZK solutions, so many out there. But then think about the everyday usage that all of you have. It doesn't matter if it's Airbnb app or whatever, there's a million apps out there. All of that has to be moved from Web 2 to Web 3. And the user doesn't really care there is blockchain behind. It doesn't care about seeds. I mean, it's just stupidity. Honestly, really stupidity, what we're all doing here, you know? So you have to mention, okay, ERC 4337, I think, is one of the standards out there that addresses that. But, you know, Ethereum is not the only blockchain, yeah? So we have then to start to look at interoperability. How are you going to enable all of that as well? So the basic rule is a user should have just 3 clicks and is in. That's it, you know? It doesn't really need to know about anything else. And there's a way for myself to actually retrieve my account. Yes, let's make it easier, you know? Friends, you nominate whatever friends, it doesn't matter. There's all sorts of people creating different solutions, but definitely stay away from emails, stay away from phone numbers. All of that stuff is really identifiable, and we need to move to a way where we have the identity, the data is yours. Yeah? Nobody needs to know, unless if you approve that somebody needs to know about yourself. Yeah? You can share whatever you want about yourself. Otherwise, we need to stay away, abstract all of that with 3 clicks. That's it, nothing else.
Amazing, thank you so much. If you're falling asleep and if you missed, the gist of it was account abstraction and decentralized identities, and you own your data. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. So you obviously mentioned the multi-chain future before, and what I think is interesting is that, you know, we have big, strong projects which are, you know, backed by, you know, by a lot of money, and what we end up with is fractionalized liquidity, right? We have liquidity there, and if it was like, you know, the omni-chain, multi-chain future that we're all sometimes talking about, you know, it would be a different situation. So my question is, how do we move towards this future, you know, like with all the storage proofs and oracles and bridges that, you know, are being developed? And second of all, you know, like the biggest concern, one of the biggest concerns is security, right? You have, you know, seamless communication between 2 L2s. Let's say you hack one and you also, you know, drain the other one. Like how do we think about it? How do we approach the security and the liquidity?
Okay. Hi, I'm Emil. Well, maybe also to go a bit to the last question, I think in the last years we developed a lot of infrastructure that empowers a kind of super app, right, that makes it really easy for users to get onboarded. But often by tackling one problem like scalability, and now we have multi-chain environment, we have a whole new level of friction when it comes for user to interact with all these different chains, different key pairs, different encryption mechanism, and so on. So I think we'll now catch up again to come a little bit now to the user experience. But I think what's really the big question is what will make people install the super app. So what will be the use case also that drives this adoption? Because I think most of this infrastructure, they're more like requirements that we check now one by one in the past couple of years and the project together. And yeah, so about the security aspect, could you say that again? What was your question there?
Just simple. Someone, steals my funds in an app, and because they hacked stole my keys or whatever, and they also steal my funds in the different app. So maybe I do actually want to have fractionalized liquidity and sort of isolate the risks. And so this is, what do you guys think about it?
I think what we might need is maybe more wallet infrastructure that is more closer to our everyday use of traditional fiat, right? So we don't carry everything or all our bank around with us in cash. So maybe we have a wallet for small transactions that has maybe, a bit less secured. Maybe it's not air-gapped or things like that. And maybe more like a Trezor to keep large amount of funds. But I don't think the solution will be to split up liquidity around different chains. Yeah.
I actually think omni-chain OFTs and ONFTs, so omni-chain fungible tokens and non-fungible. I think you need to start to look at layer 0, right? What they come up with as standard. We have to actually agree on a standard so that everybody goes with it. If you think how internet works, it works on IP. Right or wrong, it was the wrong technology. We're still using it today. A lot of us know about that, but it's very hard to change it. Maybe we will in the next 5 years, but it has to be a standard. And I would love that everybody starts really considering the OFTs standard, because that means all of us can start to build towards it. And let's end with bridges. I mean, if you think what a bridge is. I have a cybersecurity background. For any guy out there that is a bad dude, it's like a kid sees a table with sweets there. What is the kid going to do? It's just there available. It's the same thing with bridge, just money there available to be hacked, So we have to close all of those bridges and start to move to a standard where, all of that is seamless, You don't even need to think about that anymore,
Well, about the standards, if I can elaborate a bit more, this is a super great question because we have not only standards, right? So we have also like different languages, even for example, StarkWare, right? We're not, even though we have an EVM written in Cairo, we are globally by design not like EVM compatible, right? Then we have, for example, Polkadot. I'm not very familiar with Cosmos, like in detail, but for example,
we have quite an interoperability standard. I'd love to elaborate on that actually. But
yes. Amazing. So yeah, how does a standard of a token on an NFT work with EVM or Polkadot or something like that?
Yeah. So in Cosmos we have this interoperability protocol called the Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol. It's generalizable. It's not just for token transfers. It works. It's a standard that could be applied to every other blockchain as well. It works within Cosmos. It comes for free. It's also working in Polkadot now. That's starting. Solana, Ethereum is coming. Avalanche is coming. We're thinking about Polygon. Basically, the system is such that it doesn't have any bridges. There's no multi-sigs. There's no people that own a few keys and they can be hacked. There's been 0 hacks, billions and billions and billions of dollars transferred in tokens. There are a few things that you need to think about in terms of like security guarantees here. So the only security guarantee that you really have is basically if you have chain A and chain B. If you trust both chains, the situation works basically, and it's trustless in that sense. But of course, you always have to trust the destination and the sender chain. The nice thing about IBC is that it's not just token transfer. So IBC is this base layer, and on top of that, you have applications that you can build on top of it. So a token transfer is an application, an NFT transfer is an application. We also have something called interchain accounts, which basically allows a chain or a user on a chain to own an address on another chain and to execute contracts natively on this other chain, which is super interesting. This is what we think is going to be the standard in blockchain. Layer 0 also is a very good competitor in that sense. There are a few limitations to what's possible there, but we'll see how it goes. It's basically the protocol wars all over again, right? Like with TCP/IP, and at the time there were lots of different protocols as well. TCP/IP came out on top. We're betting on IBC. We have a problem here because IBC is it's not a for-profit protocol like all the others, right? We are just building it because we know it works. We don't make any money off IBC being successful, so we don't have millions and millions of dollars of investments that are going into BD and making sure that goes around. But we do our work, and it's getting there, and it's part of the process. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
I think IBC is definitely a very, very interesting concept. And it's very cool that you have like bridges to all these different ecosystems. But I guess it puts kind of like Cosmos chains in the middle a little bit, and
so it doesn't put Cosmos chains in the middle. You don't need a Cosmos chain to do IBC. That's I think there's a misconception that the Cosmos hub is somehow important here. It isn't. It's completely permissionless. So you would have you could have a Polygon Ethereum connection without Cosmos. It's literally chain to chain. And the only thing that's in the middle is just a person, a server, or whatever that goes like, oh, let me take your package and notify the other chain. You don't need to trust that server because you use light clients to prove whether or not everything was fine. So it's completely, like IBC is a separate product from Cosmos. It's an entirely different thing.
Yep. Amazing. Okay, so what was mentioned before is that we need to abstract away a lot of things, and that we don't want like people don't actually like care so much about what exactly is the technology behind it. But there is something that we often talk about that users should care about, but they don't, which is sometimes privacy and data ownership and those things, right? And essentially, for example, there are protocols that are expensive, like Dark 5, for example, which are more expensive, but which focus a lot on anonymity. But how do we communicate the value of hey, you should use the private solution, you should enable the option, you should use it, and because there's this not conflict but spectrum, right, between privacy, complexity, and things like that.
Privacy I disagree when people say that people don't care about privacy, okay? I totally disagree. I just think they don't have any option. It's as simple as that. If you look at everything you use out there, we can talk about this if you want, but from all the video conferencing tools, all the messenger apps, anything there is in communication that you all use, it's all centralized, yeah? So that means any of those tech giants could just basically do speech to text, and they do, Zoom announced not long ago that they use AI on it, yeah? You look at the basic principles of life, let's pick up on something like when you come home, yeah, you close your door, right? When you are at home, when you go to the bathroom, you close the door in your bathroom, yeah? When you go to bed with your wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, you close your curtains. Well, most of us do, but that's a different discussion. But, so people care about privacy. They do care about privacy, yeah? They just don't have any option, yeah? So we should not think too much about this in terms of how we can convince users. What we need is to make sure that everything that we create has that confidentiality. I'm going back to some of the cybersecurity principles, yeah? People, process, data, and information. Those are the three ones. And then let's stick with the data and information, yeah? There are the three of data and information. Majority of people don't know what they are, It's CIA, yeah? It means confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Those are the three principles of data and information. Confidentiality, yeah? It's the privacy part that comes with it, right? Integrity, let's not talk about that because, you know, that's about how we create things in terms of how we manage the data, how we architect everything, and I think we're going to touch base on that. And availability, a lot of people think about availability and they don't put ever into perspective the privacy part, yeah? So when you actually architect all of those things right from the ground up, yeah, the privacy is just there, is inherent, you know, you don't need really to think. So all you need then to make is, it goes back to the first question, which is how can we get adoption easier for users, you know, that's what we should concentrate. And all the devs should always, I mean, if you think about, if I ask a question here, how many of the devs that are here actually got trained in security, I guarantee you not more than 10% have, okay? And that's a problem because people are architecting things without having security at the core first and building that security in privacy from the ground up. And that will bite you back at some point. So architect in the right way, make it easier for users to use, and it's a no-brainer, you know?
Yeah, maybe I agree that it comes a little bit back to the first question. I think that the TLDR for me would be is that I definitely think that on the priority list for users' privacy is there. Is it the highest? I'm not sure. If I look at me and my friends, we get annoyed when, you know, you log into one app and it's kind of like, oh, synchronized ones, why it doesn't have all my data. I just want to click buy. I just want to click buy. And so my 2 cents on that is it should be click buy and my data is safe and, you know, my identity is safe, which means it's not the problem of the user. I agree, it's the problem like on the designing and you know, how you design your application and on the developing side. So yes, it's important, 100%, and I think it becomes a problem once your data is out there and, you know, you get damaged. So for the people who had a very bad experience because their data was on the street or something happened, they care a lot about. They start like digging into privacy, and I've got examples in my surrounding. So the TLDR is, I think that it's not something that the user should worry about. It should be by default, and it is important, and it becomes a problem when it's too late.
Actually, so Relayz, so the first app that is built on top of it is a messenger, right? As I understand.
Video conferencing.
Okay, video conferencing. So, okay, cool. Yeah, my question is, how do you onboard people to such an application? Like, so how do you go about bringing people?
We made it simple, actually, you know. If you go back to what I said previously, you know, if you think there is centralization of every tool you do out there, and if you think about it, the calls you are doing and a lot of this could be recorded, yeah? We don't know, yeah? Obviously, you know, in the security world, people say that everything is recorded, and there's a reason for that, you know. That's quite a few recent developments with some of the big giants where, you know, all the conversations were being monitored. Yeah, so go figure. Yeah, how? So what you need is to make sure is that the first impact that you need to have is you don't need to worry about your security, yeah, and your privacy. This is decentralized. That's the communication. It's decentralized. There's no, we don't run the servers, you know. The community runs the nodes. Yeah, we move encryption to on-chain. Yeah, so the encryption key is generated on-chain. Therefore, you don't need to trust us that we say there is end-to-end encryption. So we remove straight away that distrust away. Okay, then it goes back to the first question. Yeah, how you onboard users. Yeah, you make it simple. Yeah, still have the options to you can actually use MetaMask, but you have a 3-click option. We actually create a wallet for you in the background. You know. It's in your browser storage, you know, like a website puts a cookie and that authenticates as a smart contract. Job done. Make it easier. And then, of course, it's just about usually go-to-market strategies, all of that marketing stuff, you know. But the main important thing is when you architect this type of solutions, you know, it took us quite a while, you know, to design and architect this in a secure way. We actually had to separate completely the infrastructure from everything else, yeah? So the nodes that people are running is just pure infrastructure, nothing else. Yeah, because the questions will come, how you manage them, these data packets and all that. It's very simple, It's the nodes that are providing all of that. So truly decentralized infrastructure is super, super important on anything that you do in terms of communications. So that's what we've done.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so I have one more question, which is like generic, and then I have a couple of protocol-specific questions. So, so when, let's say, Ethereum appeared and people started, deploying dApps, and for some applications it made some sense, but for some applications it was an obvious no-go because of the fees, the throughput, mainly fees and throughput. Which, like when you have massive scaling, like for example, we have a fractal scaling in StarkWare. I guess you also have recursive and fractal proofs used in Scroll. So when we have this like really massive scaling, to which applications it will open doors, for which before it was just completely non-feasible? End of the row.
The scaling. Okay, well, I think the scaling is more part of it. I think it's more like a requirement for any application that is consumer-facing. So, I mean, before we could just not do it. The only thing was, I think you described this very well. It's more like blockchain was only suitable for B2B applications, and even they're better for some that are rather small, because the transaction volume we could handle was really, really limited. Nevertheless, I think it was important to prove that this system works in general. And I think now we can slowly start to think what kind of consumer-facing applications there are. And I think also to think about, well, maybe more complex systems that we can now tackle with that. So I think now we are more ready to see maybe what the internet did for as a layer for communication, to have decentralized systems as a blockchain of global, on blockchain as a global layer for coordination and cooperation. And I think this is now what I would like to see. And on the other hand, I think we also have new challenges with AI technology picking up, making really huge leaps, where we might want to think of, hey, how can we introduce transparency here? How can we govern this together? Because no single jurisdiction currently seems to be able to do that properly. So I think this is what I would like to see.
Yeah, maybe building on top of that, I agree. I think it's generally like important for applications that, gas fees go down radically and throughput up. But personally, I'm pretty stoked about gaming. I think that, I mentioned it a little bit, we're still not done yet. And the L2 quote unquote wars has not finished, and people are talking about L3s or other ways to scale. But yeah, I'm personally very stoked about gaming, also because they very much focus on the latter end of, let's say, the process, which is distribution and develop and user experience. So I think that, yeah, short answer, I think it definitely enables the gaming side of things. Just been Dev Connect, saw a lot of examples. Yeah, super stoked about that.
So I've met quite a few people in gaming throughout the years, and the first guys that came out with a true blockchain game was back in 2017. Steven Espion here, he was the guy that came up with it. It came too early. The technology wasn't ready there. It didn't manage to raise money. Decimated. I don't know if you remember that, but then in 2021 he picked it up. I'm so glad he did it. And it comes back to discussion. I agree with you to a certain point. Gaming would be massive, but the technology is not there. Blockchain is not there, so you have to separate what you do in blockchain and gaming. And I know for a fact the Animoca brands, and they're going to be here, and they're probably going to talk about that. They have a basic principle, the only thing on chain, it's pretty much the assets. That's the only projects that they invest because they don't believe. And they can talk more about that, of course, but I heard them talking several times, and rightly so, to be honest. So massive scalability is going to depend a lot on how blockchain is going to evolve. I think we're very, very early days. It reminds me when I was looking at big data. It was not even called that. I was already looking at Hadoop systems back in 2008. Quite early. Only Google, Yahoo, and a few of them were looking, and it all about distributed computing. And then it came Google with BigQuery in 2011. I met Jukan, the guy was running that at Google, and they have massive, massive problems. So data is a massive problem to scale, and it was already a problem. And then they come up with very cool concepts, and then came Zookeeper. A lot of Apache projects was great in terms of distributed computing. Yeah? But the centralization part of it, when it starts then to move to blockchain type of systems, it's a different beast. And I'm sure you can talk more about it. It's quite challenging, to do that. So anything that means massive data processing is going to be very, very challenging. Yes, you can put data off chain, you can, cryptographically sign, all of that stuff, but, there's going to be an evolution to that, because I don't think that's enough, for a lot of applications like gaming, for example, and there's plenty of others that are still in Web 2, they're going to come, and I don't think blockchain is still there, unfortunately,
Yeah, I think when it comes to the topic of large data, it's definitely complicated. And yes, you're seeing off-chain solutions and signing that. And I think that is probably the way to go forward. I don't think you're going to have all of that sit on a chain, of course. In Cosmos, we have a very, very specific philosophy around scaling, which is every application is its own blockchain. And I think that makes sense. DYDX recently, moved to and they launched their own Cosmos chain. The reason why they did it was because they need that throughput, but moreover they need that customizability and they need that sovereignty. When you have a shared state on an EVM blockchain, for example, and you share state with other apps, well, it can be slow. Obviously, it can be expensive, but more importantly, I think also you don't have control over what's really happening on the protocol layer. So DYDX specifically, they built their own sort of trading platform, their perps platform on a Cosmos chain. That's running really sweet, really fast. In Cosmos, you can have block times super low, under a second if you really want to. I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't think it really, to me, I'm just thinking about it this way. It's well, imagine you have Facebook and then you have a TikTok, and they're oh, you know what? Let's go and sit on the same server. Let's just share the same server. That doesn't make any sense to us. And I think it doesn't make any sense to anybody. So we're just thinking okay, well, you're building your own application and you're getting those users. Cool. Maybe at some point, once you're done and you're running into your bottlenecks on Ethereum, on Solana, whatever, how about maybe it's time to start your own blockchain? And we're seeing this is a proven thesis. The L2 narrative around this is actually the same. L2s are just app chains, to be honest. They can be, at least. And we're getting to this future now where I think every application is just starting up either their own blockchain or their own rollup. And then it just comes down to this interoperability issue once again. How do we solve that everything can still talk to each other? But I think that is the future of scaling.
Yeah, and so just to add one more thing, I totally agree. One thing that is often disregarded by a lot of people is the importance of availability. It's so crucial, and it takes me back to when Solana stopped back in 2021 in September, if not mistaken. They paused the chain. Imagine all of those projects. Yeah. Now imagine a project like ours, with 1 million users doing video conference, and we just have our solution deployment on one chain.
Exactly.
It has to be a multi-chain approach. I don't even understand some of the investors out there just invest in projects that are on one chain, don't have a multi-chain strategy, So it's so important when we're talking about massive scaling, to actually understand what that means at the core. And then it comes the other side, people shortcutting, to achieve that massive scaling, they disregard security. And then they get hacked. We see that all the time, So the balance is quite hard to get, extremely hard to get. So I think we're probably 3 to 4 years away from someone coming up with a very good solution for a blockchain that enables massive scale. And when we do that, I don't think we're going to stop.
Quick question with regard to what you were just saying, right? So you're saying that you view everything kind of its own app chain, and I love the topic of app chains, like our decentralized sequencer Madara basically is, powers app chains, and it's a really cool concept. But for example, in our case, everything is provable. So you can have like very small, like you can have 3 nodes in an app chain or 1 node, and it doesn't really matter. But how, for example, is it handled in the, for example, in the context of subnets of Internet Computer Protocol, or, yeah, for example, with subnets?
Subnets, Avalanche subnets?
Internet Computer Protocol, ICP.
Okay, sorry. What was the question?
I'm basically saying that when we like go, move to the world of app chains, yeah.
Yes.
How do we handle consensus, right? In the monolithic world of Ethereum, we rely on the sheer amount of nodes, right? In the Polkadot world, for example, we have shared security between chains, yeah. So how is this concept evolving with, the concept of small subnets, or small app chains?
I think in general you always have a bit. Well, either you have the security right of the whole chain keeping the same state, which makes it obviously slow, and then you can do other things like, for example, ICP is saying, okay, each app has their own chain, but it's also on its own responsible to make that as decentralized as possible, right? Or don't have any decentralization. So I think that is the challenge. Then you kind of offload to the builders who make new apps, that you kind of need to bootstrap each network from scratch. I know by now there are also other things. And maybe the intercomputer is more kind of a hybrid of these 2 worlds. I think that's the best description, I would say.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is different services provide different solutions, such as subnets by Avalanche require to bring your own validators. And then the decentralization or centralization is up to you. They actually also, I think, allow you to like run their different types of consensus mechanisms. And then Polygon kind of like came with a intermediate solution with supernets, which is like, okay, hey, you inherit the security of Polygon network, and then you only worry about running the chain. So that very much depends on what solution you go for, and that comes back then, yeah, how decentralized things will be, or how secure they will be, or what kind of consensus mechanism. It depends on the flavor you choose.
Fantastic. And I actually have one more question for Noam. So because you run the Builders program, right? So you onboard devs, yeah?
The Builders program is a program where we try to help teams who are interested in building in Cosmos or IBC. It's not so much catered towards just devs. It's really to teams that have a product and they're looking for help in both the technical component but also the ecosystem component. We also help them with the business side, so connecting them to VCs. We're sort of like, I guess, like the business development arm for Cosmos. That's the best way to describe it.
Because I feel like the question of like onboarding teams, onboarding devs, and onboarding users is like, 2 completely different like flavors of the problem. So I guess because you touch upon it quite a lot, and I guess probably as a DevRel at Scroll, like Raza, you as well, and I do too. So what do you guys like? What do you guys think about that?
Me or? Okay, sure. Yeah. Developers and users, very different flavors. So yeah, previously I was the developer relations lead, and I was responsible for this training program that we would base. It's like a boot camp to learn how to write in Cosmos. It's a tricky one. I mean, yeah. What do you want? Like the difference between, or the approach, or what's exactly the question? Like, how do we approach this, or how do we solve for adoption in those cases?
Yeah. How do you solve it?
Yeah, I mean, developers, that's really a developer relations job, right? Push hard, hackathons, get the stuff out there, content, tutorials, documentation. You just keep doing that and give great use cases of like why this technology makes a lot of sense. Users, in our case, is not our responsibility in some sense. We really just provide the core stack for people to build blockchains. We, of course, want to support them in getting users. So we help them with go-to-market strategies. We help them with lots of things. Yeah, but considering we have 1.5 minutes, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I'll give a quick rundown as well. It depends on like, in developer relations, kind of like identify a funnel. Like if you you mentioned hackathons and like educational boot camps, like top of funnel people, new inflow from either Web 2 or in Web 3, like getting them like deeper down the funnel. And as you go deeper down the funnel in stickiness, you have different tactics that you engage with. I mean, Builders program is one of the things that I've run them at like Polygon as well. It's like you have builder houses or hacker houses or builder programs where you really aid, I guess, the journey from builder to founder, or they're already a founder and like leveling up. So it kind of like comes down to like there's sort of accelerated programs or like not incubators, not accelerated programs. But yeah, the whole idea will be the whole idea is around developer relations, that you're a touch point for developers, whether that's through events, partnerships, ecosystem, education, or different types of content, whatever it is, in order to help facilitate developers build in your ecosystem, wherever that is.
Okay, well, we got 24 seconds left.
I just want to add something to what you said. All great, yeah, but make it simple for devs.
100%.
Because a lot of people complicate too much and they just go, you know. So keep it simple, and devs will love it and they will build.
I would just add one thing. That is exactly the role of developer relations. I know we're over time. Also, one thing I once sat in the audience and then on stage, someone said, "I know this is complicated, but just learn it." And that's probably the worst thing a DevRel can say. So yeah.
Yeah, well, the reason, I just basically heard that we kind of offloaded to projects, right? To bring it further to users. Like we have this gap between ecosystem devs and users. But this is it. See you guys off chain, and thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
And thank you very much, Lana, for excellent moderation. Thank you, gentlemen.